Hello, I am Jack Lewis Williams, Director of Public Relations for the New British Union, and author of our movement's manifesto, which I shall be reading to you today. The manifesto is formatted in such a way that each discrete block of ideological text is precipitated by a question, the questions most commonly asked about our movement, and the questions that most urgently need addressing. Question 1. What is fascism? Fascism is our proposed political system. As fascists, we believe that political power should belong in the hands of those with outstanding ability and talent and should be used exclusively for the benefit of the British people. We have thus created the framework for a great political machine that will achieve this vision. Question 2. What are our aims? We have many political aims. Our primary ambition is to rekindle the non-materialistic spirit within Britain, which has animated the British people for the overwhelming majority of their history. Domestically, we seek to rejuvenate the failing public services in Britain, including the National Health Service, via the introduction of a new, efficient model, and to reform our justice system to reflect morals more in line with public opinion. We furthermore seek to ensure that men and women of great ability have a chance to influence governmental policy with their ideas, regardless of their wealth or influence. Internationally, we aim to restore relations with many leaderships that are receiving our government's hostility unjustly. We pledge to cease acting as the antagonist in global conflict and to substantially reduce immigration into Britain. Question 3. What distinguishes fascism from other political ideologies? The most significant difference between the fascist ideology and the failed ideologies of today's Western political spectrum is our unwaning desire to address issues beyond the scope of materialist doctrine. Capitalism and socialism in the modern world have their success evaluated by analysis of economic figures. Whilst we recognise the necessity of a prosperous economy, fascists are the only political ideologues whose criteria for a successful political ideology include the happiness and spiritual health of the nation's people. Our unique diagnosis of the failures within British politics is a direct consequence of our dedication to understanding, truly, what the needs of the British people are. Another fundamental difference between our political model and the current ones offered to the British people is our dedication to ensuring that people with worthwhile ideas shall have a platform on which to present them, where they may then be scrutinised and thereafter potentially form part of governmental policy. Any government that wishes to implement only the most supreme ideas, and a government certainly should if it wishes to perform at supreme efficiency, should acknowledge the fact that a greater abundance of good policy proposals relative to some field come from outstanding and experienced workers within that field, rather than from the politicians, whose only noteworthy talent is selling falsehoods to the masses. Question 4. What is the duty of the government according to fascism? We believe that the measure of a nation's excellence is determined by 3 factors. Primarily, the extent to which it fulfills the needs of its people and shields them from hardship. Beyond this, our criteria are the rate at which scientific and technological advancements are made, and how successfully the nation preserves its own traditions and culture. Thus, we believe the duty of the government is to excel in these 3 areas. Question 5. What do we identify as being the needs of the British people? We feel that Maslow's hierarchy of needs accurately reflects the needs of individuals and thus the needs of the British people. These 8 categories of needs are further divided into 2 subcategories: deficiency needs and growth needs. The deficiency needs are, in order of importance, physiological, safety, love, and esteem. If an individual does not have any one of these needs met, they will endure some hardship. For example, a person who has low self-worth will suffer mentally, as will someone who feels unloved. A person without shelter and physical security will endure a great magnitude of both physical and mental turmoil, and those who have their basic physiological needs left unmet, unfed, without clean water, will perish after only a short time. Growth needs, likewise in order of importance, are cognitive, aesthetic, self-actualization, and transcendence. For an individual to flourish in life, they must first be educated and self-aware, conscious of their manners and how they present to others. Then their aesthetic needs must be met. They must feel pleased with how they look and be able to recognize beauty. Self-actualization involves the remainder of a person's unique goals and aspirations, and after the achievement of these, they feel wholly fulfilled. Finally, a transcended person is someone who seeks to help others attain self-actualization. Question 6. How do the new British Union aim to facilitate the fulfillment of the deficiency needs of the British people? Addressing the deficiency needs, we first consider the most fundamental of the set, physiological needs. The group in Britain that are most consistently having these needs unmet are the homeless people of the nation, including those living in hostels and temporary accommodation, a number in excess of 250,000 according to the charity Shelter. Such is the extent of the homelessness crisis that in London, 1 in 50 people are homeless. In Luton, the ratio is 1 in 60 people. In Brighton, it's 1 in every 70. Any government that does not absolutely prioritise working to correct this fundamental inadequacy with the British political system cannot call themselves morally righteous. The solution to the homeless problem is multifaceted, and the argument for its supreme effectiveness will become more thoroughly justified upon later hearing the other economic mechanisms described later in this text, pertaining namely to production, to foreign markets, and to the Bank of England. We must begin by acknowledging that the best path to physiological fulfillment is employment, which will provide a regular source of income. Thus, our aim is to identify and remove any obstacles that stand between the homeless and employment. Immediately, the issue of unemployment arises. If 4.6% of the workforce are already without labour, where will the jobs come from to employ an additional 250,000 people? The answer to the problem requires several actions. Firstly, the national retirement age must be lowered to 63. This will immediately vacate 400,000 elderly workers from the labour market to a well-deserved retirement, where their marginal propensity to consume their income will increase, and thus the velocity of money in the economy will hasten. Many of these jobs, however, will be consumed by the remaining 1.5 million people currently unemployed. The remaining unemployed will find work with the many new local and medium-sized businesses that shall arise through incentives offered by the Bank of England. Many, too, will find employment within large British production and its producers, which shall arise through new approaches to economics, foreign aid, and diplomacy. In order to motivate employers to give work to the homeless, who are naturally disadvantaged because of their practical situation, a bridging period wage must be introduced, whereby employers hiring the currently homeless may sign 6-month work contracts at a wage rate of £5.50 per hour, thereafter being required to pay at least the national minimum wage. Such a mechanism will allow homeless people the opportunity to gain guaranteed 6-month employment, experience, and a wage, which will aid in the fulfillment of their physiological needs. For the employer, this mechanism represents a reduction in cost of production or service, and thus considered over the whole nation, will represent a reduction in the inflation rate, cost push, while homelessness decreases. Upon hearing our economic model subsequently, it will become clear that such an idea as the production of Britain equaling the consumption of Britain and simultaneously providing the nation with full employment is not mere fantasy, but in fact an achievable reality. The fascist model guarantees a high purchasing power for the British people, a purchasing power which will allow the physiological and safety needs of the greatest possible majority to be met. In order to meet the individual's needs of love and self-worth, the government must ensure that the people are treated with the consideration that they are each a fundamental component of the greatness of Britain and that their needs are truly considered. To this end, members of the executive must leave the confines of Whitehall frequently, traversing the nation and listening to the people's opinions. They must also propagate the absolute truth that the strength of the nation and the power behind all its advancements and glories is the people. They must be unashamed in spreading this truth, that the unwavering efforts of each individual in the nation are the sole contributor to the national effort as a whole. Britain is its people, and its people are Britain. Question 7. How do the new British Union aim to facilitate the fulfilment of the growth needs of the British people? Let us now consider the growth needs: cognitive, aesthetic, self-actualization, and transcendence. Considering the cognitive needs of the nation, we must ensure that all children receive optimum education, and the fascists will actualize this through the creation of the Educator Syndicate, whose mechanism is described later on. The aesthetic and cognitive needs of adults may be given the greatest opportunity of fulfillment by a new moral approach to entertainment and the media. Music, television, and film are all rapidly losing their quality in the modern world. Content, once imbued with noble values and talent, now replaced by mass-produced cliché, propagated through perverse and immoral imagery, pumped as aggressive stimuli into the masses, including, increasingly, the nation's children. The same hand which controls all these three industries, has seen it fit to poison the waters from which the masses have ever imbibed their relief from life, for the dual intention of both poisoning the drinker and making the most profit in charging for the drink. The fascists pledged to clear the pollution from these waters. Our aims here are myriad: to reduce, as much as is possible, the objectification and sexualization of women through television, film, and music; to end the promotion of violence on such a wide scale to younger audiences; to cease the media promotion of subcultures that inherently contradict the national interest, such as gangster culture; to promote the nuclear family model, and to clarify the utmost importance of those who choose to raise a family; to provide the masses with a source from which they may obtain unbiased fact, from which they may then form their opinions and worldviews; to halt the spread and encouragement of vanity by special business interests, and to more vigilantly shield children from inappropriate material. This will be achieved by creating stricter guidelines for the content of material conveyed through television, film, and music. The regulations would not censor these mediums on grounds of, for example, violence or sexual content directly, but rather on context, the message being conveyed to the masses. Violence and sexual content shall, however, be banned from public broadcasting that may be seen or heard by children, including daytime radio and television. The British Broadcasting Corporation shall, at last, put the taxpayers' money to good use, creating entertainment that empowers fundamental roles in society: mothers, families, workers, and so on. Furthermore, as explained in the answer to question 12, the people of the nation will regulate media companies through national syndicates, and thus the nation, and not just the government, will remove media bias in any way it sees fit.